Allevon, written and produced by Celia C. Copyright 2009. All rights reserved. Allevon, the city. The towers of the city were like icy cylinders along the rough, barren shore of a vast and turbulent ocean. It was a perpetually crashing sea that seemed endless. Somehow, though, the towers were always on stable ground. More than anything, the elders who built the towers wanted to create a city that would hold all of its citizens. So after surveying what was left of the landscape, they cleared land next to the ocean and built up instead of out, a marvel of quantum engineering and architecture. The unwavering towers stretched up into the clouds with tops that peeped into the stratosphere. Side by side, the buildings gleamed with the magnificent reflection of glass and the twinkling of countless lights illuminating the millions of lives being played out inside. From north to south, the massive tower stood in order of the rank of its inhabitants: cumulus, stratus, cirrus, vaporous, aquus, terra, and lastly, subterra. The populace demanded order, and so it was. The city's citizens didn't mind living lives dictated by hierarchy. It was all that they knew, and after so many centuria, it was all that they wanted. From the inside, all of the towers displayed idyllic exterior landscapes through their massive windows. Those landscape views were made possible by the sensitive living glass and other living materials that made up the bulk of each building. Each of the towers, even lowly terra and subterra, were made mostly of an organic glass that lived and breathed in its own way. The glass was programmed with an algorithm that connected electromagnetically to the collective neural impulses of all the building's inhabitants at any given moment. It was that collective consciousness that determined what was seen from within each tower. On the outside, the living glass adjusted to the environment for the comfort of the people inside. But within the buildings, the glass did something even more extraordinary. It created controlled natural environments. On some floors, there were fields, forests, lakes, mountain ranges, and even deserts. In stratus, cirrus, and cumulus, where the city's most prominent citizens lived, there were weather systems that created rain and snowstorms on some floors. It was fair to say that after eons of eco-engineering, the citizens didn't miss outside at all. Beyond the facade of tower walls, the real outside was a harsh affair. Outside was unforgiving, full of untamed nature and forgotten wildlife, which had both morphed in unpredictable ways. Solar intensity fluctuated between lukewarm and scorching, depending on the unstable atmosphere. The arrogance of generations past had left the wilderness to its own devices, and it had run amok. Now, it seemed, there was no going back. The city was constructed on the shores of an ocean that covered most of the planet, but the water was only fit to look at. The life forms within it had developed unchecked after exposure to all manner of toxins. It was unclear what the real effects had been, but of course, there were horror stories about those who tried to find out. Many citizens believed that the sea itself was a toxin, but no one knew anymore, and actually, except for a few fringe naturalist groups, no one really cared. Meanwhile, inland was another story, a fearsome one that was mostly unfamiliar. There was dense forest as far as the eye could see, inhabited by feral, mutated wildlife few could describe with any knowledge. From a distance, the city was a strange and magnificent sight. A string of majestic high-tech towers jutting into the clouds but surrounded by unending ocean on one side and raw wilderness on the other. Both of them as uninviting as the towers themselves were alluring. And in one of those towers lived a guy named Allevon.